Thank you, Nina and Ricky. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines, we begin with a deadly plane crash in San Diego this morning. The aircraft from Teterboro Airport in New Jersey hit one of the U.S. military's largest housing neighborhoods while trying to land in fog. Then to Washington, D.C., where the FBI now calls a deadly shooting outside the Capitol Jewish Museum a terror attack. The suspect charged with murder allegedly told police he did it for Palestine. The victims were a young couple, two Israeli embassy staffers just days from being engaged. And the news starts now. And we begin tonight with a truly horrifying scene in San Diego. A deadly plane crash directly into a quiet neighborhood, taking off from Teterboro Airport in New Jersey and flying clear across the country, only to crash while trying to land in dense fog. Take a look. The plane slammed right into one of the U.S. military's largest housing neighborhoods just before 4 a.m. this morning, when families were still fast asleep. Homes and cars instantly erupted in flames so intense you could barely make out the jet. Families were jolted awake by the explosion, forced to run for safety, and some carrying their children, others trapped by the flames right at their door. Firefighters rushed to battle the inferno. Assistant Fire Chief Dan Eddy was among the first on the scene.
Morning, everyone. Crews arrived on scene just after 3:47, about 3:55 this morning. What they found was behind you, the scene that you see behind me right now. We had a plane that had come through this neighborhood, taken out one home. We had one home on fire, multiple cars on fire going down the street. We initiated what's called an Alert 5, which is an upgraded for a plane off the runway. We started the Alert 5, followed that with a second alarm to ensure we had all the units here. It's 3:45 in the morning. Our worry was the fact that people are home, people are living in their houses, and we want to ensure that we had all that done.
The mangled wreckage now lines the street, but in what authorities are calling a miracle, all the fatalities appear to be from on board the plane. Remarkably, no one on the ground was killed, even with homes and cars engulfed in fire. Tonight, the investigation is underway with questions emerging about who was on board that jet and chilling details about the pilot's last communications. Officials are confirming the casualty numbers.
All right, so we had 8 injured and we had 2 fatalities is where we're currently at right now. So 8 injured, 2 fatalities. One of those injuries was transported. That's our current numbers. We're still assessing.
And the dense fog early this morning is a key part of the investigation.
When I came in this morning at about 4 o'clock, there was very dense fog as we came in. And some of the individuals are here were the same time. It was dense fog throughout the whole plateau that we had up here. We do have a clipped power line behind us. NTSB and FAA are looking into that to see if that was part of the problem as it came in.
This is a military neighborhood, and officials say the crash spread so much jet fuel across those front yards. They had to approach it as if it were a wildfire. While there were no fatalities on the ground, 8 people were injured. The scene is one of utter destruction and one home permanently ripped open. Assistant Fire Chief Eddy described the extensive damage.
So the one permanently destroyed is this one right here behind us. We have damage to multiple homes down to the west of us on the street. That damage will be assessed. Our main concern on that damage, I don't know the full extent of the damage because our job is to preserve the scene so NTSB can come in and do the investigation.
The NTSB says this plane likely had black boxes, which will be crucial for the investigation into why this crash occurred. And we're going now to the South China Sea, where the standoff between China and the Philippines continues to escalate. It seems there's no end in sight to the rising tensions as both nations traded sharp accusations today following a dangerous confrontation in the contested waters. The latest incident unfolded on Wednesday, and the Philippines is condemning what it calls aggressive actions by the Chinese Coast Guard. The Philippine Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources says the lives of a civilian crew were put at grave risk when Chinese vessels fired water cannons and even sideswiped their vessel, the Datu Sandai, as it conducted marine research near a disputed reef. BFAR says their ships had never faced water cannons in that area. But China is telling a very different story. The Chinese Coast Guard claims 2 Philippine vessels illegally entered waters near Subi Reef and Sandy Cay, and that personnel tried to land on Sandy Cay. They say their Coast Guard responded with professional and lawful control measures. China also said a collision occurred because one of the Philippine vessels ignored multiple warnings and approached a Chinese ship dangerously, placing full responsibility squarely on the Philippines. Interestingly, the Chinese statement made no mention of water cannons. The U.S. has weighed in with U.S. Ambassador to Manila Mary Kay Carlson, describing China's actions as aggressive, posting on X that they recklessly endangered lives and threatened regional stability.
The Chinese Coast Guard has already spoken on the matter and released a video of the scene. Facts speak louder than words. The Philippines did not listen to the Chinese side asking repeatedly not to send people illegally to the Taisian Reef in China's Nansha Islands, which seriously violates China's sovereignty and seriously violates the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. The Philippine side should immediately stop its infringement and provocation. Otherwise, the Chinese side will resolutely respond. We advise the United States to not use the Philippines to stir up trouble in the South China Sea and not to undermine peace and tranquility in the South China Sea.
I think I would like to believe that our crew remains to have a very high, remains to be on high morale. They are proud of what they are doing, and this kind of harassment will never break their spirit in continuing their patriotic duty in supporting the government for marine scientific research. We believe that it does not have any strategic gain on our part kung gagayahin natin sila. We just have to maintain our moral high ground, that we are law abider and we are upholding the international law.
Sandy Cay is particularly sensitive. Located near Thitu Island, the largest feature the Philippines occupies in the Spratly Archipelago, and an area also claimed by China, Malaysia, Taiwan, Vietnam. Just last month, China stated its Coast Guard had landed on Sandy Cay as part of sovereignty operations, though the Philippines denied Beijing seized control. China, of course, claims sovereignty over nearly all of the South China Sea. And tonight, a horrifying development out of Washington, D.C. The deadly shooting outside the Capitol Jewish Museum is now being officially called a terror attack by the FBI. And late today, the suspect has been formally charged with murder. Here's more.
These 2 Israeli embassy staffers were killed by a lone gunman while leaving an event outside Washington, D.C.'s Capitol Jewish Museum on Wednesday night, officials said. Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Lynn Milgram were soon to be engaged, according to people who knew them, who also said the couple was committed to building bridges between Arabs and Jews in hopes of ending bloodshed in the Middle East. Police identified the suspect as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez from Chicago and said he chanted, "Free, free Palestine," after being taken into custody.
Free, free Palestine!
Police say the suspect had fired at a group of 4 people with a handgun, hitting the 2 victims. He's been charged with first-degree murder.
31-year-old Elias Rodriguez of Chicago, Illinois, is now charged by complaint after his initial appearance before U.S. Magistrate Judge Matthew Sharbaugh with the following: murder in the first degree for the murder of 30-year-old Yaron Lashinsky, a foreign official and official guest of the United States. Mr. Lashinsky was here on official business for the State of Israel. The defendant Rodriguez is also charged with 2 counts of murder in the first degree for both Yaron Lashinsky along with 26-year-old Sarah Lynn Milgram of Kansas.
Israel faces sustained international condemnation for its escalating Gaza military offensive, while Jewish advocacy groups have warned of a rise in anti-Semitic incidents globally. Here's Ayelet Razin, a friend of Milgram in Tel Aviv.
They had nothing to do with Israel or Israelis' government policy, the war, nothing.
Investigators on Thursday pored over apparent writings and political affiliations of the suspect and searched his apartment in Chicago. FBI Director Kash Patel called the bloodshed an act of terror, as did Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on Thursday said U.S. President Donald Trump was saddened and outraged by the shooting.
The evil of anti-Semitism must be eradicated from our society. Hatred has no place in the United States of America under President Donald Trump.
I'm talking to him and I'm like, so do you like the museum?
Witness Katie Kalischer told Reuters she was among people in the museum Wednesday night who were chatting to a man who entered looking very scared after gunshots were heard outside.
So he pulls out his keffiyeh and he says, I did it. I did it for Gaza. Free, free Palestine. And he's chanting this. And then suddenly the police come in and they arrest him.
The museum event for young diplomats was hosted by the American Jewish Committee, an advocacy group that supports Israel and confronts anti-Semitism, according to its website.
And now, a somber update from southeastern Australia, where the toll from widespread flooding continues to rise. Another life has been lost in the devastating floods. The body of a man was found in a car trapped in floodwaters earlier today, Friday, bringing the death toll to 4. 3 days of relentless rain have truly transformed the landscape, cutting off entire towns, sweeping away livestock, and destroying homes. You can see cars submerged up to their windshields and streets turned into rivers. Emergency services say about 50,000 people are still isolated. And while some residents might be thinking of heading home, authorities are now warning to be extremely careful, telling them to watch out for dangers like snakes hiding in the floodwaters. Even Prime Minister Anthony Albanese had to cancel his planned visit to Terry, one of the hardest hit towns, due to the impassable floodwaters.
This is a dangerous circumstance, and even when the rain stops falling from the sky, sometimes the waters keep rising for a period of time, and that is the case in the mid-north coast at this point in time.
And a grim update from southern China. Deadly landslides fueled by heavy rains have claimed at least 4 lives, with 17 others still unaccounted for in Guizhou province. This disaster underscores China's growing vulnerability to extreme weather, as authorities warn of more frequent and unpredictable heavy rains due to climate change. And heading to the Atlantic, if you live along the coast, it's time to pay close attention to the skies. Now, U.S. government scientists are forecasting another active hurricane season for this year. Get ready for an above-normal Atlantic hurricane season, according to U.S. government scientists. The forecast released today predicts we could see anywhere from 3 to 5 major hurricanes this year.
So we're predicting an above-average season once again, 2025 above average. And you can see the graphic up there. Specifically, it's a 60% chance of above normal season, 30% chance of a near normal season, and only a 10% chance to be below normal. So we're really looking at an above normal season once again. For the range of storms, we're calling for 13 to 19 named storms. That's when we get to 39 miles an hour when we name the storms. So 13 to 19 of those. Of these, 6 to 10 are forecast to become hurricanes. And that's when you get to the 74 mile an hour mark. And 3 to 5 is the number of major hurricanes. That's Cat 3 and above, with maximum sustained winds of 111 miles an hour or greater. The average is 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, 3 major, so above the average. And when it comes to some of the factors that we see associated with hurricane season, we're not really seeing any changes in the numbers or even the strength when it comes to a warming of the planet. But we are seeing rainfall. We're seeing heavier rainfall rates. And, you go to these communities, you're seeing some of the rainfall warmer planet. The atmosphere holds more moisture. So you are seeing a situation where some of the rainfall rates are higher. And that's, once again, I stressed water huge in my comments. And we need help to be able to really reach out to the communities to let them know the dangers of water.
In a dramatic move, the Trump administration has effectively barred Harvard University from enrolling international students. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has accused the elite institution of fostering violence, anti-Semitism, and coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party. Now, Harvard, for its part, calls the action unlawful. Take a look.
U.S. President Donald Trump's administration on Thursday revoked Harvard University's ability to enroll international students and is forcing existing students from overseas to transfer to other schools or lose their legal status. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has ordered the university's Student and Exchange Visitor Program certification be terminated and accused Harvard of, quote, fostering violence, anti-Semitism, and coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party. Harvard rejected the allegations, calling the move unlawful. The clampdown on foreign students marks a significant escalation of the Trump administration's campaign against the elite Ivy League university in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which has emerged as one of Trump's most prominent institutional targets. The move comes after Harvard refused to provide information that Noem had previously demanded about some foreign student visa holders who attend the university, the department said. In the 2024-2025 school year, Harvard enrolled nearly 6,800 international students, amounting to 27% of its total enrollment, according to university statistics. Trump, a Republican, has undertaken an extraordinary effort to revamp private colleges and schools across the U.S. that he says foster anti-American, Marxist, and radical left ideologies. He has criticized Harvard in particular for hiring prominent Democrats to teaching or leadership positions. Trump has frozen some $3 billion in federal grants to Harvard in recent weeks, leading the university to sue to restore the funding.
So I don't believe it's illegal. Foreign student visas are a privilege, not an entitlement. In particular, students cannot enter the United States if they provide support for designated terrorist organizations. They wouldn't be allowed to enter the United States. The Trump administration wants to remove students who've provided support to designated terrorist organizations like Hamas, and they want to be able to know which students have done that. So they want access to disciplinary records and to videos of protests. I think the Trump administration is demonstrating that they're going to prevail in this fight with Harvard. I know that people think Harvard has over $50 billion in endowment and they're, have this status and this history. That's all true, but the federal government is bigger and richer and will prevail here in this fight. And I think Harvard understands that. And really all that they're doing is positioning for a better deal. And so the litigation that Harvard has been pursuing is just to try to get a better agreement with the administration. And I suspect that's ultimately where we're going to end up.
The Trump administration's imposition of a ban on Harvard accepting and keeping overseas students is absolutely enormous attack, both on Harvard and on academic independence and integrity. In terms of the institution, Harvard is a university of something like a bit over 20,000 students, I think 22,000 or so. And about 6,000 to 7,000 of them are overseas students. It means nearly a third of Harvard's students would suddenly face the question of whether they would be able to stay on at Harvard. And of course, the impact on Harvard's finance would be pretty devastating. And that is absolutely intentional. And the message was also sent that other academic institutions should look at Harvard and therefore behave, in quotation marks, in accordance with what the administration wishes. So you can't really have a more blatant assault on academic independence and academic integrity.
The diplomatic encounter between President Donald Trump and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa took an unexpected turn when Trump introduced discredited narratives about white farmers facing genocide in South Africa. Now, the meeting intended to strengthen bilateral ties instead highlighted the challenges of addressing misinformation at the highest levels of international diplomacy. Thamasai Likeness for more.
Ramaphosa tried to rebuff the assertions, but Trump frequently interrupted him, repeating the claims.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can take land.
And then when they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No.
Trump had staff play a video consisting mostly of years-old clips of inflammatory speeches by some South African politicians that have been circulating on social media. He then presented an image that, he said, showed dead white farmers being buried. It turns out the screenshot came from a Reuters news video, and that video had been shot in the Congo, not South Africa. Political analyst Thorozani Chilanga Butao says Trump's remarks are not surprising.
We have to accept that Trump isn't a fan of any country outside of the United States of America, and any opportunity that he gets to make allegations or to slander those countries, he will use that as a way to assert his control as a president.
Ramaphosa had hoped to discuss trade and reset relations after Trump criticized South Africa. Instead, he found himself pushing back against Trump's false claims as the Oval Office meeting became more combative. Chilanga Butao says Ramaphosa is not alone in what seems to have become regular attacks on foreign leaders who meet with Trump at the White House.
It's quite worrying, but the comfort we have in that is that we are not the only country who has been on the receiving end of allegations or an ambush. And so I think we have to just get comfortable with this uncomfortable position that the U.S. is finding itself in, but is also putting other countries in.
She says Trump seems to be focusing on white genocide because South Africans like Elon Musk have his ear. On the streets of Johannesburg, people are not impressed by Trump's performance.
I don't think we need to explain ourselves to USA. We know where we stand. We, as South Africans, we know there's no white genocide.
It's amazing what he did, because like really those Americans, I think especially me personally, I think Donald Trump, he thinks is a leader of the whole world.
A spokesman for South Africa's opposition party, Economic Freedom Fighters, took aim at Trump's treatment of refugees. Sanawo Tambo says the U.S. is only helping people who don't need it, people like white South Africans.
We should be concerned as humanitarians that the U.S. resettlement refugee program has been suspended for nations that genuinely need support for refugees, nations like Sudan, DRC, like Palestine, who need refugee resettlement have got that cut off from them, and this has been given to one nation of people such as the Afrikaners who are not suffering a genocide at all.
Despite evidence to the contrary, Trump remains convinced that there's a wave of racial violence against white farmers. The myth of white genocide in South Africa has become a rallying point for the far right in the United States and elsewhere. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
U.S. President Donald Trump is pushing forward with a bold and controversial plan that could fundamentally change America's defense strategy and reshape the future of outer space. It's called Golden Dome, a massive missile defense program. President Trump has long vowed to secure the homeland from missile threats.
I promised the American people that I would build a cutting-edge missile defense shield to protect our homeland from the threat of foreign missile attack. And that's what we're doing.
This week, President Trump unveiled more details for the $175 billion Golden Dome program, a vision aimed at blocking threats from nations like China and Russia. First ordered by Trump back in January, the design calls for a vast network of satellites, possibly hundreds, working together to detect, track, and potentially intercept incoming missiles. Space analysts are calling this a significant shift in geopolitics. Andrew Reddy, an associate research professor at the University of California, Berkeley's Goldman School of Public Policy, describes it as a sea of change.
Traditionally, we've used space for intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capabilities, and now we're actually talking about assets that will be, living inside of space and performing a core, defensive purpose. There is a historical precursor to what we're seeing now, and it is Star Wars during the Reagan administration. And there are echoes of that program and what's being proposed.
That historical precursor, Ronald Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative, was announced in 1983 with the ambitious goal of making nuclear weapons obsolete. But it never fully came to fruition, largely due to immense technological hurdles, staggering costs, and concerns it would violate an anti-ballistic missile treaty, a treaty since abandoned.
This design for the Golden Dome will integrate with our existing defense capabilities and should be fully operational before the end of my term. So we'll have it done in about 3 years.
Industry experts, however, are far less certain about the 3-year time frame and the $174 billion price tag. The Congressional Budget Office, for instance, estimated this month that Golden Dome could balloon to as much as $831 billion over 2 decades. Professor Reddy highlights the sheer scale of the financial commitment.
Yeah, so I think the biggest news regarding the Golden Dome program is really the significant increase in resources that are going to be provided for missile defense in the context of U.S. defense spending. I think to some extent a lot remains to be figured out in terms of what the architecture is going to look like at the end of the day. But what is absolutely the case is that there's going to be significantly more dollars going towards this type of programming moving forward.
Such a massive defense shield also carries significant geopolitical implications, raising concerns from other major powers.
Yeah, so I mean, there are significant concerns in both Beijing and Moscow around the U.S. investment in missile defense. That has been true since 2002 when America left the ABM treaty. I think that ultimately what they fear and what a lot of strategists fear who work on deterrence issues is that there's kind of an incentive to potentially be more aggressive given that you have this missile defense shield to fall back on. And so that's something that a lot of scholars and theorists are worried about. Indeed, this is timely. Dick Garwin just passed. One of his primary arguments with presidents over the last 5 decades has been really focused on the destabilizing consequences of building systems such as this.
The idea for Golden Dome was inspired by Israel's land-based Iron Dome defense shield. But Professor Reddy stresses the two systems are vastly different in scope and the challenges they face.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of differences between Iron Dome and Golden Dome that are worth parsing out, not least the geographical context within which it's being deployed. So trying to cover the continental United States is a significantly different challenge than the relatively small geographies that we've traditionally used for theater-based missile defense, whether it be, right, the Russians have had a system over Moscow, for example, right, or Iron Dome in the Israeli case, or the various different Ukrainian cases. And so the geography is different. Also, the types of systems that it's defending against is also significantly different. Let's just take speed, for example, right, Scuds emanating from, Iran, the Houthi rebels, etc., going significantly slower than a ballistic missile. So a ballistic missile, as it's entering its terminal phase, is going Mach 12. Also, too, those warheads might have decoys on them. Oftentimes, there'll be multiple reentry vehicles, and so, right, a single missile will split into, right, multiple warheads, and you'll have to be able to take care of all of those. And so, there's a lot of really hard challenges as you look across the kind of the missile defense problem space. I do think one of the
U.S. Space Force General Michael Gutlin has been named by Trump as the lead program manager, a role widely seen as central to the president's military planning. The Golden Dome represents a monumental ambition with equally monumental challenges and potential consequences. And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. And finally, in our news tonight, after all the serious headlines, here's a story to put a smile on your face. While Angelina Jolie and Natalie Portman might have millions of followers, a tiny Pomeranian named Star of Cannes is stealing the show at the Cannes Film Festival. This fluffy influencer is proving that even on the French Riviera, a good walk and a wide smile can make you the ultimate celebrity.
Yeah, when Star is out, it's always like everyone stopping me every minute, like, can we take a picture, like, she's so cute, how old is she, what's her name, every time it's like this. And especially when I walk on the Croisette, it's always crowded, and she's a star, it's her.
And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you all for joining us again. Have a great weekend. Good night.